Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I wanted to thank Lauren and the entire team for having Integris and myself out today, but what Lauren didn't tell me is that I was gonna have the hardest job, and that is after you guys filled your bellies, I was gonna have to talk to you about cybersecurity. So I hope you guys enjoyed the lunch. It's been a phenomenal venue and presentations today, and I hope to just add value. A couple quick things on the presentation today and what we're gonna go through. We'll start with introductions and why I'm excited to talk to all of you today. Number two, we'll touch on cyber war and the impact of your business, right? We have the Ukraine-Russia war conflict going on right now. What does that actually mean for the rest of the world in the cyber world? Number three, understanding cybersecurity risks and responsibilities, pending regulations, and wrapping up. So real quick, that was the bio that was read earlier about myself, but before we get into that and accolades and everything like that, I wanted to tell you why I'm excited to talk to all of you as an audience. And the number one reason is that you all are the most trusted advisors to the business community. It is time and time again where they run studies about CPAs and accounting firms and the insights and knowledge that you transfer over to your business clients or just the general industries and companies that you service every single day. So why does that get me excited? Because you're all here to learn about cybersecurity, which is probably one of the number one things that is affecting small, medium, and large businesses every single day. So if you come back with this knowledge and those people are more intentional about listening to your advice, we can really move the ball forward for cybersecurity in the United States for the small and medium-sized businesses here. Why am I a good fit for this presentation today and talking to all of you? So I spent about 10 years doing cyber insurance for businesses and universities and nonprofits. So part of the conversation will touch on the insurance angle, and I'm sure as the trusted advisor to your clients, you've gotten involved in a lot of insurance conversations about cyber renewals. And if you haven't, you will be later on this year about what's going on in the cyber insurance marketplace. The second half of my career has been on the IT and cybersecurity provider side, what I call the proactive side of the house, on what can we do today to implement things to make sure that we don't have to call our insurance carrier or broker to actually file a claim. So what's going on right now in the world and what resources do you have available to you? So cyber warfare is not new. It didn't just get created because of the Ukraine and Russia conflict that's going on. It's been going on for a very long time. You'll hear individuals talk about it as threat actors. You'll hear them call out nation states. A lot of times they stay a little bit of a level short of actually saying this is cyber warfare from another country because they don't want to get into that definition of what is war. But specifically, there's a lot going on. I know this is hard to read probably from back there, but the slides and PDFs are available to all of you. What I did want to point all of you to is a resource that everybody in this room right now has access to. And that is called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency of the US. At the bottom here is their link to the government's website, which is cisa.gov. And you can go in there and have free resources of what are they recommending for small, medium, enterprise businesses of all sizes. But very specifically, our government has created an agency specifically on the cyber side. So a quick poll, get you guys using your limbs a little bit. Which of the following is true? Russia disabled Ukraine's power grid during Christmas 2015 and 2016. Any hand raises on that one? There we go. Russia crippled Ukraine's supply chain in 2017 with cyber activities. Anybody on that one? C, Russia crashed Ukraine's government website in January of 2022. Got some back there. D, all of the above. There we go. Awesome. Yes, so Russia has been actively utilizing cyber warfare against a lot of folks, especially Ukraine. So the next topic I'd like to go into is what is called dwell time. Dwell time is a statement around how long is a threat actor on a network or a system before they actually take action. And dwell time, for a lot of folks, they think like, hey, somebody gets on my system and then they act right away to take me down or implement ransomware. The reality is that dwell time on average is 43 days. So on average, a threat actor is in an environment sitting there and watching what is going on. You'll hear a lot about business email compromise, where somebody will be sitting there and interpret or intercept communication between a CEO and a CFO before they'll wire some money out. They'll intercept in between there, and what they're doing in those 43 days is they're watching the flow in the business processes of how does Anthony and Michele communicate to each other. When is Anthony going to be in Austin? Because I'm a Yankee, as Michele, my colleague, would point out. When is Anthony going to be in Austin so I can intercept that and go to my CFO, Michele, and say, hey, this is an emergency, we need to wire out this money. So on average, 43 days. I've seen from some insurance carriers the average is about 6 months that somebody is sitting and waiting to execute. The standard statement you get from a lot of folks is this hasn't happened to me, or I'm too small for this to happen to me. And the reality of this is the complete opposite. It is a lot easier for them to mass come after or mass attack smaller organizations and medium-sized organizations who don't have the process, the technology, or the people to defend against them. So when we get that standard statement as trusted advisors in the room of this won't happen to me, the answer is it's easier for it to happen to them. They're easier targets. As you go more up the food chain, the budget gets increased for cybersecurity, the level of talent gets increased, so it becomes harder and harder for them to act. What are you seeing? On the average downtime for ransomware is about 21 days right now. The average cost of recovery is about $1.8 million in 2021. There's a ton of pending legislation. So on the compliance frameworks world, you have California's already done it, New York has done it, and it'll continue to go from there about state governments and the federal government continuing to push compliance across the finish line to get these organizations up to speed. Cyber insurance policy renewals are skyrocketing or not even being renewed. I have a very specific slide on this which compares 2021 to 2022, which we'll go over. And the impact of cyber warfare is truly untested today. And what they mean by the word untested is we still haven't seen full-out scale attacks to the level that could really crush an economy or our infrastructure. This is really difficult to see, but it's pretty cool. So when you go home and you need some reading materials, on the left-hand side is all the threat actor groups that exist and their specific names. In this highlighted column here, yellow, red, is actually telling you who did they pick sides. So in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, a lot of these groups are actually picking side of, am I picking Russia's side, am I on Ukraine's side, or am I in between? So you can take a look at that. They'll tell you the actual activities and how they like to get into the environments. And then they'll tell you how they communicate and where they go to attack and the date that they got started. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of the times it's the unknown. You know, I haven't heard an immediate story, and somewhere in my network, people talk about threat actors. What actually are threat actors? This slide gives you very descriptive names and where they go on what's the reality of the situation. So what do we need to be able to get after this problem that continuously persists itself? We need some visibility and the ability to detect an intruder. And what are some of the regulations that are coming from the federal government on a bipartisan angle to make sure that businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses, are starting to get up to speed because they're lagging behind aggressively? In this new legislation here, it says that the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency would like all businesses to report incidents and breaches within 72 hours of them happening. It also states that if they've made a ransomware payment to an outside criminal network, they want that ransomware payment explained or detailed out to them within 24 hours. A lot of times these small and medium-sized businesses don't even know they've been hit yet. And then the next question for them is, where do we go to even get Bitcoin to be able to play our threat actors? A lot of times, so the way I look at this is additional steps that small and medium-sized and even enterprise businesses need to take that they're not prepared for. This is a further expansion on exactly what's coming down the pipeline. And then we go to what are the governments, what are these compliance frameworks like HIPAA, like PCI, like GDPR, like New York DFS, all these different acts, what are they trying to tell you to do to get up to standard? Some of them are listed up on here, and some of them are provided for free through that link that I showed you previously from that cybersecurity federal government agency. Number one, an incident response plan. So if something is going to happen, what are we going to do? How are we going to act? A lot of times, as I mentioned, we become completely frozen. So I got ransomware on my system. My 15-person business is now down and cannot operate. Where do I go to move the needle? Writing this all out and having the key players in place prior to it happening will better prepare you for when it does happen. I'll give you a couple quick examples on this and where it comes into play. If your email system is taken over and goes down, you shouldn't have email as the form of communication in your incident response plan. You need to have a backup form. Maybe you go to personal email addresses. Same thing with phone systems. If you're using voice over internet VoIP phone providers, if that system goes down and you go to make a phone call, you're not going to be able to use it. So you have to constantly be thinking, if my primary line of business applications that I use to run my business go down, what am I using as a backup? That's how you should think about your incident response plan. Number two, multi-factor authentication. You'll see a slide in the future here that says put MFA on everything. So whether it's your email addresses, your work email, your personal email, your VPN connections, your line of business applications that are hosted in the cloud, literally everything should have a multi-factor authentication token associated with it. The number one complaint we get is from executives on this that say, I don't want another step to be able to get into my email or to be able to get into my Sage Intacct financial system. I call that laziness, and today's day and age, you can't afford to be lazy. There's also, if it's done correctly, you can remove a lot of the nuance that goes into those multi-factor authentication systems to make it very clean and ease of use for your users in your environment. Number three, endpoint detection and response. So a lot of you will know this as antivirus. And the big movement in the antivirus world right now is, you probably heard the names of McAfee and things like that, Norton Antivirus. The big movement right now in antivirus and what they're defining here as endpoint detection and response is you have traditional antivirus systems like Norton and McAfee where they're triggering off of a definition. So to do some layman's terms explanations on that of those specific systems are acting off of a known definition of a malware virus. So the antivirus provider says, these are known threats, here's the line of code that it looks like, and those systems are put in place to prevent about known definition-based viruses. Where the world is going to is what's called zero-day vulnerabilities. And what happens is the threat actors have the ability to change that code so quickly and so rapidly and re-release it out into the world that the definition-based antiviruses can't keep up. because what they would have to do is constantly update the code, update the definitions, throw it over to the end user, and have that end user do an update or a patch to be able to act on that now updated version. So where the world is going in terms of antivirus protections is what's called endpoint detection and response, and it's called a behavior-based antivirus. So behavior-based is, I'm going to keep picking on Michaeli here, but Michaeli comes into the office at 8 a.m. every single day. She loads up the same 3 programs. She downloads a certain amount of documents per day. She uploads a certain amount of activity. She usually has 5 browser tabs open. That antivirus system is now looking at Michaeli's behavior and not at specific definitions. So if all of a sudden Michaeli starts downloading or uploading a significant amount of activity, that system is going to know that this isn't known behavior from Michaeli and how she usually goes throughout her day, and it's going to shut that device down, disconnect it from the internet, and off of the network. So we're kind of moving to the next level of AI or behavioral activities versus I have to know this definition. That's where the world's moving on that. Security of incident and event management. This is really to understand once an incident happens, how did it happen? How long were they there? What did they touch? What did they take? All of that type of stuff. And then number 5 is backups. So what I typically talk about on backups is, hey, do you do backups? And the standard answer is yes, we do backups. And then when you really start to get into the details, there's a couple levels of backups or things that you need to be considering when talking about backups. First one, do we do them? Yes. Second, are they on-site or off-site? Well, they're on-site. Okay, well now we need to take a version of that on-site backup and we need to do an off-site or to the cloud. All right, so now we have on-site and off-site backups. Well, when do you do them? We do them daily, hourly, monthly, weekly. The real question around backup and business continuity is 2 concepts. One is called recovery time objective, RTO, and one is called recovery point objective, RPO. Recovery time objective says, if I go down, how long am I willing to be down? And how long am I willing to wait to get back up and restored? Our typical answer there is approximately 4 hours. However, that may vary based on the line of business application. You may be a IT support company like we are, and you can't have your phones down for more than 1 minute. Our RTO on our phone system is 0 minutes. Our financial systems, on the other hand, for us, we don't live and die by. So our financial RTO package system may be 4 hours. The other terminology is called RPO, or recovery point objective. Recovery point objective is if I go down, how much data am I willing to lose? So what do I mean by that? Well, if we do hourly snapshots or hourly backups, that means that at 9 a.m. my backup ran, and at 10 a.m. my backup's going to run. Well, what happens if I go down at 9:59 a.m.? I've had 59 minutes worth of data work activity that I will lose because that next hourly snapshot has not taken. So there's organizations that do all types of things. When people tell me I have daily backups, well, to me, their recovery point objective, or RPO, is 23 hours and 59 minutes. So the question you're really saying is, I'm willing to lose a day's worth of work and activity by my staff and my people if I go to daily backups. That same thought process has to be applied to all different types of things. The final one is we run into a lot of environments that we assess, and they're doing backups and they're doing them right, but they've never tried to restore from the actual backups or actually tested if the backups are working. So a lot of times these systems will back up on the hour, and then you go in and you see a green little check mark, but if you actually dive into that backup file, it's not backing up what you thought it was. So that's step 1. Are you truly getting backups? Step 2 is, okay, now the backup file is real, but can I actually restore from that, right? Because if my systems go down and I have to restore from that backup file, can I actually get my systems back up and running off of it? And a lot of times that's not actually getting done in different environments. Where do we tell most people to start is with an assessment. I'm a huge fan of putting a clear stake in the ground of this is where we currently are, these are the gaps that exist, and this is our future state of where best in class or minimum security standards is, and how do we fill that gap. For every organization, it's completely different, but that's the best place to start is an assessment to understand what are the business impact items, high, medium, and low, that my organization needs to know about. Here's a couple different things from President Biden on the Bipartisan Cyber Incident Reporting Act, which I touched on earlier. It goes into 16 specific industries that are going to have to comply with this 72-hour framework of reporting back on any type of incident and 24-hour response on ransomware payments. So what usually happens when you put up a blocker for people, whether it's the federal government, the state governments, or your specific industry? People work around them. And that's this example here. How effective is that gate? So we get into the conversation around people, process, and technology, which make up our security programs. So I'm going to walk you all through this right now, the logic that we think through this on. If I have no people, no process, and no technology, I have absolutely no defense. If I have people, but I have no process or technology, I don't have the ability to execute. What do we got? I have no people, I have process only, and no technology, I have wasted effort. On this next one, we have no people, we have no process, but we do have technology, we have shelfware. If we have people and we have processes, but no technology, we have the burden to scale. If we have people and technology, but no processes, we have inconsistent operations. The next one down, we have no people, but we have process and technology, we have poor adoption. And the people, process, and technology equals ultimate success. And this is true in anything that you think of. We're relating it to the cybersecurity side of the house and IT, but people, process, and technology really need to come together to create that successful outcome that you're looking for. Here's a couple things that we would say, 11 things to do tomorrow. So for 11 things to do tomorrow, we'll start at the top. Patches and updates. So how many of you don't have to raise your hand, but I know it exists, how many of you see my computer needs to update and you say ignore, ignore, ignore? Absolutely. So let me inform you of what that patch or that update is actually trying to do. And that's your operating system. It could be Microsoft. It could be a third-party application like Adobe or Java that says, hey, user, we know we found an incident or an issue within our code, and we need to update it to fix that vulnerability. And as most folks do, ignore, ignore, ignore. So what does a provider like Integris give you the ability to do is we can systemize that so you can't ignore forever, and eventually we will make you do it and all the users in your environment do it and stay up to standard. We like to call number one, free security. A lot of times people think that they need to spend a significant amount of dollars to get up to standard, and the answer is you don't. There's things like patch management and software management where we can put processes in place and at no cost. Number two, enable multi-factor authentication everywhere. I already talked on this a little bit. I can't tell you how important this is, whether it's your personal stuff or your business stuff. You really need to put this on everywhere. The reason why is all of your credentials right now are on the dark web. Whether you think so or not, they're there. What do I mean by credentials? Your usernames, your passwords, whether you use it for your utility company, you use it for your credit card company, or you use it for your email address, those credentials are out there, and they can be purchased right now for $1. So why is multi-factor authentication important? Because if I can purchase your credentials for $1, I can log into your Bank of America account, and I can get in with no other additional thing other than your username and password. So if I enable multi-factor authentication, I'm going to ping your cell phone, your Apple Watch, I'm going to send you an email, I'll send you a text message, and verify that it's actually you. Is multi-factor authentication perfect? No, it is not. There's multiple cases of people's cell phones getting hacked and avoiding the multi-factor authentication. However, it is one more layer to prevent somebody from getting in. Number 3, chain passwords for network devices when possible, requiring 2FA. Once again, like I mentioned, a lot of executives get tired of changing their passwords or trying to remember them. Why is it important and why do we make it a standard? Because of what I just mentioned. Your credentials are available for $1. If I constantly am having you change that password every 90 days, it's harder and harder for them to keep up with that change. Number 4, remove internet-facing management consoles. So very specifically, we walk into environments that have Windows 7 or Server 2008, which are expired and end of life. The software manufacturers, the overall operating systems are no longer being patched, secured, or updated by those vendors. We need to make sure those are offline and not connected to the internet. Primarily, we should make sure that they're not in the environment. However, number 2 is sometimes they need to be in the environment because the line of business application is only scalable to that server, software, or desktop. So it has to still exist, but we have to make sure we disconnect it from the internet so nobody can get to it. Number 5, upgrade end-of-service versions of software your company is using and supports. There's all different variations of this. Some of your customers probably have, whether they're manufacturing or different business models where the software application they use was created in 1980 or 1990. And whoever created that software application hasn't continued to invest in it or scale it up to today's standards. So we have to figure out a way to get them to the next level of that software or to find another vendor that's doing what they need to do. Number 6, verify everyone in your company has completed security awareness training. So when you go out and you're talking, your clients are the executives, CFOs, CEOs of different organizations, they are the biggest problem child in the cybersecurity world. So what do I mean by that? It's everybody else in the organization should do cybersecurity awareness training or not click on bad links or download bad attachments, but it doesn't pertain to me. And that's the complete opposite of what it needs to be. It needs to start at the top and work its way all the way through the organization. And if they have that mindset, then everybody else in the organization is going to think those things don't apply to them as well. So make sure people are doing exactly what you're doing here today. You're sitting here listening to me talk about this stuff and knowing what was going on in the actual real world. Same thing for them and their employees. Number 7, document and train on the process for reporting suspicious activity. I call this a reward program. I think it's extremely important for executives of an organization to go out to their employees and say, we reward employees for raising their hand and saying, I got this malicious link, or I clicked on this bad attachment. We should have a reward program, not a punishment program, because if you reward them, they'll continuously do it, and they'll get really, really good at looking out for bad emails, bad attachments, or things that just seem sketchy. Number 8, when possible, implement SIEM, Security Information and Event Management, for additional visibility. So a lot of times this is based on a compliance framework. I don't think every single organization needs to have it, but this is a system which takes, they're called logs of your system and actually what's going on. You keep that for 7 years and you continuously go forward with that. Some of this is industry specific, but it is another layer to understand what is actually going on in your environment. A lot of times you take the SIEM log reports, you implement it into what's called a managed detection and response system, and they work together to get you the best result you're looking for. Number 9, test backups and put at least one version offline monthly. We just talked about that. Number 10, review policies and corresponding procedures, especially incident response plan. So some very, once again, free security stuff. Password policies that we change every 90 days, patching policies, you have to update and patch your computer systems. Screen lockout policies. If I walk away from my laptop or my desktop and I'm gone for 90 seconds, let's make sure that I have to relog back in so a third party or my colleague can't jump on my system and get access to the data that I have access to. Number 11, cybersecurity assessment, gap analysis, and executive review. There's so many different stories, versions of environments, reasons for certain things. We are just strong proponents of this is where I am today and this is where I need to go to. Whether it takes me a month or 3 years to get there, I at least have a plan in place and a vision of where I'm working towards. A lot of times we get involved in organizations where it's, my support is bad. And you go, you do an assessment and really, yes, support is bad, but it's the entire environment is 15 years old and it just can't scale with today's requirements. There's a couple different situations here. I don't know how I'm doing on time. I think I'll be doing all right. We'll touch on a couple of these, but I really want to get into some Q&A and answer people's specific questions about these. Here's your standard email compromise for a Wichita company that specializes in selling unique resealable food storage containers and what they went through and what it looks like. Basically transferring over their credentials with a very simple email without any involvement between breaching actual systems. Ransomware is a Denver law firm that had been growing rapidly and expanding into other cities. Bullet point 2 is them talking about using VPN capabilities to connect in. Over the last 2-3 years with COVID and the push into remote work, a lot of VPN systems were utilized in their firewall consoles. VPN systems are exposed to the outside world and they require username and password. Most of them don't require multi-factor authentication out of the gate. So once again, if I know your username and password and I know you set up a VPN system, which I can see because it's publicly facing to the internet, I can just enter your credentials, get direct access into the entire company. That's what happened here. Insider threats. This is a big one. You guys see this a lot in the CPA world. I have some friends that do forensic accounting on exactly these types of situations, but insider threats are big. I've seen them around hospitals with nurses, emergency room nurses, where they're just scanning medical documents directly back to threat actors and getting paid behind the table for it. There's all different types of insider threats. Number one being rogue employees. I get in a disagreement with my employer, I'm frustrated, I'm upset. There's a service out there called Ransomware as a Service. The threat actors send rogue employee a USB device. Rogue employee comes in the next day because they're pissed off. They plug in the USB device and boom, the entire system goes down. The rogue employee gets a commission off of the total amount of Bitcoin that the threat actors were able to get out of their previous employer. Happens all the time. You don't hear about it because these types of things don't make the news. And then here's a Rochester manufacturing business that had multiple different locations, been the victim of a cybersecurity incident where the threat actors got into the Exchange email server, and specifically around a patch that wasn't completed on time. A lot of times we see these small businesses that do have 1 or 2 IT folks involved, that those IT folks over time have just been promoted and promoted and promoted with different title changes, but their actual knowledge of the world in which it is today has stayed back in 1990 or 2000 and not with the reality of today. So a lot of these small and medium-sized businesses, awesome, thank you, just saw that for the first time. A lot of these small and medium-sized businesses are almost being held hostage by their IT folks, and they don't even know it. And I only have 5 minutes, so I want to do Q&A. Here's the slide I was talking about on cyber insurance. In 2021, a firm, applicant A, with no endpoint protection, no training, and open ports, was actually able to get cyber insurance for $12,000 in 2021. In 2022, declined, significant increase, and declined without these things, $22,000. In applicant B actually had their endpoint protection in place, they had training in place, and they closed their ports, $8,000. So you can see the comparison, about a $4,000 difference with the right things in place. And in 2022, even with the right things in place, increase, and $14,000 over last year. So really, this is the example of these people are paying for these people's mistakes. Good? Thank you. We have a booth outside. We have Paul and McKaylee. They're my colleagues. We have a couple giveaways like a drone. Come by, check us out, ask any conversations you have. Thank you. Thank you for having me.